what your choices have been, and what karmic timelines and contracts you have journeyed. The light is calling for the reunification of all aspects of life in this realm now. It is calling for the cleansing of all polarities. It is calling for the rising of all sacred heart centers now. All are being summoned home to the greater light now. Hi, everyone, and welcome to a joint podcast with Whole Soul Mastery and Whole Soul School and Foundation. My name is Marie Mohler, and I'm an author, an intuitive, and a cosmic messenger of living an inspired, rich, authentic, and empowered life. And I am here today with Elizabeth Alanis. I'm so grateful that you can join me today. We're going to delve into some beautiful topics, but you are a mutual friend of Dr. Terry Cole Whitaker. That is how we met. And what a beautiful connection it is, because any connection with Terry, Dr. Terry, brings other beautiful connections. And that's how living an inspired life works, right? When you connect, we're magnets. And when we draw into our experience wonderful people, creative people, people who have gifts and talents to share, this is what I've experienced. So I'm so grateful to have met you and that Dr. Terry introduced the two of us. And we're going to be talking about some things today related to the work that you do. But I first wanted to invite you to tell our listeners a little bit about you and how you came to do the work that you do now today.
Sure. Thank you first, Marie, for having me in your podcast. And yes, it was a wonderful connection that was made. Thank you to Dr. Terry Cole Whitaker, my teacher and spiritual mother. So, yeah, I'm very happy and grateful to be here with you. Well, let me tell you a little bit about me. I am a shamanic healer and also a psychotherapist that helps women to move from the dissatisfaction and even pain in their relationships to the joy of discovering and experiencing true love. True love first in their relationship with themselves, then in their relationship with others and with the world.
Wow.
And how, yeah, isn't that powerful? You know, I realized that I think the most important thing for us human beings is to feel that sense of deep connection and belonging. And yet, because of all the ideas that we integrated from our families, our culture, the collective consciousness, we are very confused about what love is. And what we experience is actually not true love, but a shadow of that. And so I grew up with this experience, and my relationships were very painful. My life was very painful. I was born in Mexico and raised in Mexico in the 60s. So what I learned from my family and from the culture was that love was sacrifice, enduring, that I didn't even have a sense of who I was as an individual. I didn't exist if it wasn't in function of the family and my role, how I help them, but always putting myself at the last wagon of the train. So there was a moment in my life when I was so desperate that I remember I was crying and I said to myself, if this is love and this is life, I don't want to live anymore. And I was in that deep crying when a voice came from me and said, this is not love. And you are going to find your life. Your work is to find and live your life in your own terms. And when I began reflecting on that, living my life in my own terms, it was very difficult from that concept of I am a daughter, I am a sister, I am, I live in function of a family and living all that. I came to the US and I find Terry, my teacher, 35 years ago. And that is when I began discovering who I am and the power that I had to create the life that I wanted. So that was the beginning of my long, long journey.
Wow. Well, thank you, number one, for sharing, because a lot of people can relate to your story in their own ways of our culture, our conditioning so often reinforces us to look outside of ourselves for the things that we need. That's the way this world teaches us that that's what being a human being is. Almost mirroring to us that we don't have all that we need inside us or to even connect with that or go looking for that. We look everywhere else but there. Usually it's the last place we look. It's like if we've lost something in our house, sometimes when we actually find that lost object, it's like the last room that we hadn't been through before, right? And I think that happens in our spiritual journeys, that we often look all kinds of places in relationships, especially for our parents to love us, for our siblings, for our spouse, for that relationship, our partner. And that is so profound how you had the insight to see how people have been living through, in a way, a distorted sense of love, right? A distorted lens of love, and feeling a great deal of dissatisfaction. And yet, a lot of times, people think that that's what life is. That is what love is. It is enduring. It is sacrificing. It is somehow disempowering. It can be very disempowering to feel like you have to keep sacrificing yourself and your gifts and your needs and your desires, your ideas, all of those things. And particularly it sounds like in your culture, like in Mexico and in the family you grew up in, that might even be stronger in certain cultures that that still have those family values of duty to family. Here in the US, a lot of that in the individualism in this country, and in other places maybe less value is placed on that to some degree. But for you to have had that experience and have had the wisdom through a difficult situation or a series of difficult relationships and times in your life where you just kept getting knocked back down and maybe not valued or seen or allowed to really be who you are, except for to fulfill the roles of your family and the expectations of people around you. To me, I think that's the trap that a lot of people get in. It's just the conditioning. It's like there's a role for you and your family. It's kind of stamped on you early on. And if you don't play that role, people get disappointed or they judge, or it can be very painful. So I'm grateful that there are people in the world who do this deep work that you do, bringing people back to a state of loving themselves first. First relationship is finding that with ourselves. And you do that through a process. You have a language I think we're going to talk about today. This is something that I think you must teach your clients, the 8 characteristics of true love. And I wonder if we can talk about that a little bit, those 8 characteristics. Mhm.
Yes. Thank you for that. One of the things that are very deeply ingrained in me right now is the origin teachings of the Delicate Lodge. This is a very particular body of teachings, earth wisdom, based in earth wisdom. It's a particular, it's an interesting name and it's
Yes.
very important. These are ancient Mayan traditions. Delicate lodge means based in the feminine, in the sacred feminine, rather than, the after colonization, that is the male god and the masculine. No, this is centered in the divine feminine and is the origin teachings, the origins from the beginning, the natural, the rooted in the earth, in nature, in the feminine. So it's a very soft and loving set of teachings. And the teachings are contained in the medicine wheels. The medicine wheel, as we know, is a circle that, represents wholeness. Wholeness within ourselves, wholeness in the whole universe, a wholeness in our relationships with others. And they teach us how to live. So I was given by the spirits a medicine wheel in my pondering about what true love is. And the spirit spoke to me about a characteristics that are in a medicine wheel. Let me see. Yeah, I have here the diagram that is called the wheel of true love. I don't know if it is, if
Yes.
this can be seen.
Yes.
So in each one of the directions, there is a characteristic for us to recognize true love. The first one in the east is freedom. In a relationship, I am free to be. In my relationship first with myself, we also apply it in my relationship with others in the world. Freedom to be all that I am, that I am not reserving anything, any part of me because it's going to be judged or I'm not going to be included, is the freedom to be. Then in the southeast is the characteristic of presence. Quite often in our relationships, we are not even present. We wake up and we are busy on our things and we say words or phrases that are just a routine, but we are not really present to the other, what is happening, really listening, really experiencing the other person in the present. Also, sometimes we have an idea of we are in the past, like this happened and I still angry and I am reacting to the past or fear to the future, but we are not in the present, whether with ourselves or with others. Then the third characteristic in the South is compassion. We all make mistakes. We miss the mark. And we need to develop that characteristic to be compassionate with ourselves and with others when we miss the mark. That doesn't mean to tolerate things that are not, that are not acceptable, but that we see things, the person and ourselves with compassion. Then in the Southeast is the concept of self-responsibility. I am responsible for myself, thoughts, feelings, actions, decisions, etc. So this is important because quite often I see that we drop responsibility for ourselves, but we are taking responsibility for everybody else,
Right.
or the other person. There are many combinations, but it's always keeping that sense of self-responsibility. Then is the aspect of commitment. Commitment to myself, to my needs, to my dreams, to my desires. Um, Commitment to a relationship as well, to be there to listen to when things come out of alignment. How do we encounter again? How do we align again? Then in the Northwest is the concept of reciprocity. That we need to be careful with this because it's reciprocity of care. It's not like I give you this and now you have to give me this. It's a concept of reciprocity in care, in love for each other. Then in the North is the concept of communication. And communication is not speaking only of how well I can express my thoughts or my feelings or my experience, but it's also how well I am listening to the other, because the communication has those two parts, and quite often people is skilled in saying everything that they need to say, but they are not skilled at listening. And the last characteristic in the Northeast of the wheel is integrity. Let's live in integrity with who I am, with my values, with what my heart tells me is the right thing for me. It may not be for the other, but this is for me, and to live with that integrity no matter what. So this is a tool that I use with my clients to observe in the relationships. When they come with problems in the relationship, we study the 8 characteristics. Are they present or not? But we take also a step further, saying, are these characteristics present in your relationship with yourself? Because if they are not present in your relationship with yourself, they are going to show up in your relationship with the others or with the world. So this is one of the tools that I use with my clients in that to realize what love is and what true love is. Yeah.
So powerful. Each
And
and every one of those words. And I'm somebody, as a writer, as a scribe, really, and a channeler for spirit, the words, when they come through a channel, it's a sound, it's a frequency, and then they become a shape and a word on the page. But words are so much more than what people realize. That there's so much energy and frequency, and talk about a return to wholeness, loving into wholeness. Each one of those directions, each one of the words in that wheel has so much energy in it if we would embrace the lessons and the messages and the learning and the healing and the liberation. Because I'd imagine what happens is some people come, I'm sure people come to you for sessions for all kinds of reasons, but people can feel broken, or they can feel discouraged. They can feel disempowered. They can feel shamed or guilt or whatever it is, which is all the shadow side of those traits. So they must come in presenting one way and think they're that. They think they are the guilt or the burden of responsibility for everybody else, right? Or that they're trapped in their lives and they can't get out, right? They don't have any sense of freedom and power. And you must work with them with these are living energies in your wheel. These are living energies. And you bring that to life in the conversations with them. Yeah.
Oh, you said it beautifully, Marie. And I am amazed that you spoke about the shadow of love, because that's the other wheel that came out of that. And this is the wheel of true love's shadow.
Wow.
And we also go into experiencing. Are you experiencing a sense of enslavement?
Mm.
Instead of freedom, enslavement. Instead of presence, absence of disinterest. Instead of compassion, condemnation. Instead of self responsibility, self forgiving or self forgetting. Instead of commitment, inconstancy or detachment.
Mm.
Instead of reciprocity, entitlement. Instead of communication, smothering. Instead of integrity, deceit or judgment. So we explore where we are at and how you can move from experiencing the shadow of love to experiencing true love. It's a very powerful journey once you start realizing, especially how you keep yourself in slavery, how you
Yes.
keep yourself uh, abandoning yourself, an absence of yourself, all those characteristics. But we go deeply first into how you are um, giving this to yourself that is manifesting in the outside. Because what I see quite often, and it's important that when a client comes to me, is because they are in pain in their relationship or great disappointment. And they want to change the outside. And it's important to turn it into the inside and start doing that through self love that will manifest in the outside.
Yes. And it is a journey that people go on. I think it's a journey to realize. I mean, this was a significant journey for me. It was, I mean, I would call that a huge part of my awakening process is to realize it's not the other. It's not the job. It's not the spouse. It's not the parents, right? It's not your bank account. It's something inside you that I mean, I'm so grateful for gifted souls like you who, again, through your own hardship, like downloaded or channeled or streamed through this wisdom that was the remedy, the antidote to all of the pain and despair and suffering. But it's a journey. It's all people don't think this way, but I'll speak from the earlier Marie from like 30 years ago, right? When I was thinking it was these things outside myself that were causing my challenges, right? It's much easier to think it's the system, it's the job, it's the boss, it's the parent, it's whatever, it's somebody else other than you. And while that's a simple fix in our thought process, because we think they're to blame for my pain, right? It's another level of a willingness to go into a journey to do this work that you're talking about. And sometimes people have to be in enough pain that they're willing to hear another perspective, right? They're willing to go a little bit deeper because blame's not working anymore. Yeah.
Yeah. And something that you say remind me of the power of pain. Sometimes we think that is a bad thing happening to us, but from the pain comes the desire of something new, the yearning, the flame that brings the energy for us to do the work. So for me, being in deep pain for a while in this. It helped me, it gave me the energy to move. So yeah, these are experiences that are valuable for me now. The pain has been valuable. Not that it's the only teacher. And this is important, so let me expand on that. I created Loving to Wholeness because in my journey to being whole again, experiencing myself, my wholeness, my happiness, and everything. So, in this journey that started with this, with pain, I thought that for many years that I had to be in pain to learn the lesson. And it was afterwards when I came into these sacred teachers of the origin teachings of the Delicate Lodge. It was when I realized that pain is a teacher, but there are many other teachers. We can choose to continue learning through pain, or we can choose to learn through joy, to delight, to pleasure. There are many other teachers, which I didn't know before. I just thought that through pain it was the only way to learn. Although I'm grateful to my teacher pain, but there was a point in my life when I said, thank you for being my teacher, for guiding me all the way here. And now I release you and I choose this other teacher, pleasure, because I don't want to continue learning through pain. And although there are occasions when, yes, I continue learning to pain, but it's not as intense and it's not as long, and it's not the only teacher. Now I learn through excitement to other ways. And that's why I created Loving to Wholeness, because I want my clients to experience other teachers, the soft way of loving ourselves, to moving from the shadow of love through true love. It doesn't have to be that painful. It can be a soft way.
That is so beautiful, that the healing process, that would be the divine feminine, is softening those hard edges, softening the tough love that, it's an expression. We hear about tough love. And it is amazing. I loved your language about how pain is a teacher. It is a teacher in our experience. But it's also, to me, the way when I listened to you speaking about it, the energy I felt, pain is simply an escort in the journey until we're ready to choose a different teacher, a different way. And we have to go, it seems, the human experience in a 3D, like lower density, lower consciousness world that we've been in for many cycles of time now. I think people go around that wheel again and again, not just in one lifetime, but in many lifetimes, until we're ready for a different escort, until we're ready for a different teacher. And I love how you said that, because I can feel it's almost like some people, for me, for sure, I had a number of experiences in my life when I was a child, and then I was a teenager, and then I was a young adult, where we all have our challenges. And I certainly had mine, but they were almost a normal part of life. But then I faced a challenge, like some people do in their spiritual awakening journey, where it wasn't your average kind of challenge. It wasn't your regular challenge. It was a massive, like, it blew up my whole world kind of challenge. And in the excruciating pain of that was also the awareness. And I can say this now, it took several years to awaken to what I think you did as well in the suffering, that I was graduating from pain as being my teacher. I was graduating from the shadow thoughts and beliefs and entanglements, I would say, that I had karmically with other people and other things. And I'll just say, when you were sharing your journey about basically saying, if this is what life is and if this is what love is, then I don't want to be here. I don't want to do that. And I had my own experience. I think when you go on let's just call it the wheel of pain, that shadow wheel of love, it is painful when we're living outside of the epic nature and beauty of love. It is incredibly painful, but we're not quite sure where the door is, or we don't even know that there's a door to another way when we're in that much pain. And I remember very distinctly when I was in the throes of what I was going through, that one night I actually said something similar to spirit, to God, like, maybe my life is I'm meant to suffer. I had been trying to find my way out of suffering and I wasn't finding it. And finally, I found peace for like a 24-hour period where I just said to God and in a prayer, like, I think I surrender and I accept, if suffering is my fate and this will be the rest of my life, then I accept, and maybe I'll feel better if I stop fighting suffering, right? Within like 24 to 48 hours, spirit delivered nearly to my door books about creating your life. And I heard about like the movie The Secret, right? Which it's a beginning point for some people, right? And manifesting, and no, you're not designed to suffer. And I ended up writing a book, and one of the things that channeled through me is that we are not designed to suffer, but we often suffer because we've forgotten the divine design. And that is how the escort of pain and suffering left my life. But I think for me, and I'm not so sure it doesn't hold true for some people, that I had to get to that breaking point with suffering, with pain, where I surrendered to the awareness of, if this is bigger than me somehow, or I need a bigger lens to move through this, or I'm ready to leave this chapter and the cycle of pain in my life, and I don't know really where the door is. But sometimes it's just acknowledging that we're in a place that's like we're in the underbelly of love. We're in the underworld of God's creation when we're in that amount of pain. And that was my way of acknowledging I'm in so much pain that I'm not even sure there's a way out. But by admitting that to myself, the door opened. Whereas a lot of people try and fix what's broken. They're trying to fix the pain or put a band-aid on the pain, or, you know, all kinds of ways that our culture, with addictions and all kinds of things, people can even get addicted to self-help workshops. They'll go to,
Yes.
like, workshop after workshop after. Once you start to wake up to the fact that you could feel better, you start dosing up with all these teachers that are wonderful and they figured out these things. But when you start having a lifetime full of attending these workshops but not converting it into your own life's experience, sometimes that can be a little bit of a trap, and it can still be painful, because I know people who can say, I've done all this work, I've been to 1,000 workshops, I know all this language, and my life is still painful. I think there's a moment, I don't know if you have a language for that. I mean, for me, it was a point of surrender. It was a point of surrender where I knew that there had to be something different and I didn't know fully what it was. And that's what opened the door. What do you call that?
What you are saying brought two things to me. The first one is the card, the tarot card, the Tower, is so important because quite often that's how we move. That's the first thing that moves us. Is that breaking apart, the destruction of the power, the structure, the
Destruction.
structure that held us together. And they crumble. There is nothing. So there is people who want to go and take the little pieces that are all over the place and try to put them together, as you said, and it's not going to work. It's broken, the whole structure. So surrendering and saying, now what?
Yes.
Let's clear the place because nothing here works.
Yeah.
And then let's find what are we going to build, but it's to be a new structure, a new thing. It will not work trying to put it together with residues of what it was. So that's the first thing in that surrendering. And for many of us, that is the way that we start the learning and transcending all these things, is by that stroke that sent us to the floor on our knees and we surrender. Has to be a true surrendering in order to get a new breath of life. And now what?
Because the
That
old
is
is
the first
dying.
thing
The
that,
old has to die inside us. Our allegiance to the pain and that bond that we have has to destruct, right? The structure, I like inside destruction is structure. The structure
yeah,
has to deconstruct. And I think in surrender, we allow spirit and God and all the forces that want to help us to come in and clear that out. So you said this, so a new breath of life can come in, but you have to let the old breath of life die. Yeah.
yes, yes. Then another thing that came to me is something that I experienced in myself first and then in my client. Most of my clients struggle with this, and I did as well. And is that although I was doing a lot of work, I started with psychotherapy and I became a psychotherapist. That was the first thing for me. And then I saw myself like, yes, I was um, learning and changing and doing new things, and then a regression, a big regression and going back. And then again, taking the steps and then a regression. And then, as you say, going to this teacher and going to the other and this practice. And I was doing the practices, but I was like seeing momentary transformation and then going back. So when I began getting involved in shamanic learning, I understood a couple of things that I didn't click for me before. And it is that we carry karma from our ancestors, from past lives as well. And are those things that keep us in the loop. So, for instance, what example can I give you? I saw one of the visions that I had many, many years ago was of me in a past lifetime. And I didn't even understand the first thing that I saw it. I only felt that I had been a priestess to Mother Earth in the Mayan culture many years ago, and that I had betrayed Mother Earth. And I was just shaking and yelling when I realized that. And I said, I betray Mother Earth, I betray Mother Earth, but I couldn't understand. Though I felt that my sense of guilt that I always carry with me and impacted my relationships, my capacity to say no and limits and everything, because that sense of guilt that was inappropriate for this lifetime. I didn't do anything that will account for that, but I was feeling that big sense of guilt and shame that, pull me to make decisions that were not best for me and go into this loop. So when I realized this and I did some work, that sense of guilt was released, but I couldn't understand completely what had happened. It was through many visions that happened afterwards in shamanic journeys that I understood that I was in relationship with a very powerful king at that time. He was married, and I was the priestess, and I was the lover. So it was my guilt and my shame to be in this relationship that was not sacred. And he didn't love me. I was in love with him. He didn't love me. And but he was in love with power. He didn't love his wife, his children, or me. But he manipulated everything for power. And when his wife found out and confronted him about our relationship, I ended that relationship. And at that moment, he sprayed something on me that I said, he took my power away. And after that, in that lifetime, I continued as a priestess, but it was kind of a performance. I wasn't in my power. I lost my power.
Wow.
And then afterwards, I had another vision that was, he couldn't have taken away your power. You gave it away because of your shame and your guilt for what you got into. So you haven't lost anything. And at that moment, I took my power, I claimed it. And I was able to stand in a different way in life. But if I hadn't gone in through these experiences of what happened in a past life or what happened with my ancestors or this thing, I will not have resolved the issue. So sometimes we are working with tools that will only help us go this far. Family, individual level, family level, perhaps cultural, but we don't go into other arenas that are very important in holding our lives, holding us from our power. So that is why I created Tritherapeutic Integration into Wholeness. Because as a psychotherapist and then also as keeper of these sacred teachings in the medicine wheels and as a shamanic healer, we can use the tools that I have gathered around so we can go at the deepest level and to help the people to move fully into that direction, to cut with ties, to cut with ideas, to recover our powers and move on.
Wow. I mean, just wow, the extraordinary journey that you had that was its own self healing to uncover your past lives for the context in which you have pain in this life, but came from such an old one that if you hadn't gone outside the bounds of traditional therapy or whatever, you would still be walking around carrying those burdens, not knowing why this bag of rocks was, you were saddled with it. And my training is also, I was trained as a counselor and in psychology. I got out of school wide eyed and so excited to work with people. But I felt like in the environments I was a therapist in, that my hands were tied because especially where I was living, but the culture and community with the people I was working with and my employer, this was not, I mean, past life has become a little bit more language today, but 30 years ago, that was way out there, right? And nobody was comfortable with that. So I actually only practiced for a couple of years because I felt like I needed to take all the things that my soul was learning and expanding. And I started writing books and publishing books. And then I had this experience that catalyzed a bigger awakening in me, and I started channeling deeper wisdom. But only when I let that otherworldly wisdom in did the pain and all that ancestral karma and all those things that didn't have a place before, or there was no door out or way out, it started to lift. The movement came in, the destruction of the old belief system where I was part of the old belief system in the suffering I was living. But what I also want to say is, in my own experience, trained as a therapist or counselor, I also felt limited in helping people. The conversations I wanted to have with people, I could not have as a traditional therapist. And so my answer to that was to become an author instead, to share it a different way. And then to become a channel, and then to be a blogger or a podcaster, and to use those very same skills. But I have the expansion where, like, you have the tri therapeutic, what's it called again?
Try therapeutic integration into wholeness.
Try therapeutic integration into wholeness. What's remarkable about you is that not everybody, I mean, it's not that common yet to find somebody who's trained with all the knowledge of a therapist or a psychologist, right? And then to have the shamanic piece in it. When you can make your picture bigger, the resolutions, the healing, the bigger picture perspectives can finally come in and bring some of the needed healing, that you brought awareness to that commitment you made. Talk about a commitment, a shadow commitment in that other lifetime, to feel disempowered, to feel like you gave up your power and that you deserved maybe losing your power because of the shame and guilt. You would not have uncovered those feelings if you didn't go into these higher realms of awareness, where that the truth of those commitments, and that you make these vows. We make these vows in other lifetimes thinking it ended when our life ended back then, but it doesn't. It carries forward through time in many of us and shows up in patterns we can't quite figure out. And what I think is remarkable is when I meet people like you, and also like Terry Cole Whitaker, who, whatever her training was, and she taught a lot of what she was learning for many years in a very powerful way and touched thousands and millions of people. But I think even she had her own experience, that there are limits to what I've been taught, what I learned. I need to go and learn more. There's a bigger picture here, some way, somehow. And she, in her own way, searched for the truth, was searching for the deeper teachings, the more ancient teachings that knew, how to access different layers of consciousness and energy and awareness, and the soul being free and sovereign again. So I think what we're both saying in this podcast, that's very powerful, because some people will be listening to this and have been through some of those dark nights of the soul, like we're referencing today. And I want to acknowledge those people who are listening, and we've grown through some of those things, and we must have, all of us, found some kind of alternative healing. In my experience, it has not often come from traditional conventional healing methods. It's come from that, right? That amalgam, that convergence of skill sets and awareness and things. And I want to say, if people are still in pain right now, listening to this and saying, I'm one of those people who's deep in pain, and yeah, I haven't gotten to the place of surrender, so I don't, there's no door, there's no way out. They may be feeling that, and it's a very painful place to be. But when you can find people who will meet with you and help you and tell you where the stairs to the bridge to your new life are, and they walk with you in that softer feminine energy, those frequencies that are so important, because the masculine will keep just ramming into the wall and ram into the wall and walk into that wall
Yes.
again and again, and it doesn't feel good. And there's a point when it's the feminine, that softer energy, comes in and is basically saying, I know the way out. And the divine feminine lives in all of us. The divine feminine in every single person listening to this already knows the way out, but we're not going to get there trapped in our linear left brain minds that are going to keep, I don't know. In my own experience, I sought specialist after specialist and professional after professional and workshop after workshop. And I had to exhaust it because my left brain was not satisfied until I did all of that. But when I was out of options and my left brain and that whole part of me was tired, that's when the surrender came. And the minute I surrendered and said, I don't know where the door is, but I know I want something different. I'm ready for different. that's when the feminine came and walked me into new experiences. And you are somebody who provides that, like, that deep mothering energy, right? Mother Earth, it seems you've reclaimed your power to heal
Yes.
for good, right? To be on the wheel of true love and inviting people to rediscover it too, instead of the underbelly of that wheel, right? Which is the karmic wheel. I think a lot of us, I'll speak for myself, we're ready this lifetime to get off the wheel of karma and step into the things you talked about, which I don't know that I could name them all, but I know it was freedom and presence and self responsibility and commitment and those levels of that's the right side up wheel, right? That's the divine creation where you're in your power and nothing else has power over you. But it's a journey. I mean, it's not necessarily that somebody makes a decision today and tomorrow, poof, their life is instantly better, but relief comes when you realize that you may have found that multidimensional doorway that you can step into, and that right there is a relief when you let the feminine in to help the process. Yeah, powerful.
Yeah, it is. I really, it was first my own experience and then in my work with my clients and seeing that, yes, it takes a while, but it doesn't have to take. I was 17 years in therapy. And then at the same time, I was doing other work and everything. So it doesn't have to be as painful. It doesn't have to be as long. Because when we take into consideration the whole of you, which includes your previous lives, your lineage, the culture, your individual, everything. We take into consideration everything. So when we see we are stuck in this wheel of karma, let's see what is here and in what dimension that we can work with. And yes, even when we cut cords, let's say we do a ceremony, we cut cords very consciously, but you have to change to your actions to not go back and reattach. You
Yes.
have to do certain work, but it's easier, the movement, and especially if you have the support. Because sometimes that's the difficult thing. We want to do things on our own, and it's very good reading books, doing those things, but we need guidance in this work. I am I consider myself very fortunate to have the teachers that I have, starting with Dr. Terry Cole Whitaker. I have my two beloved teachers in the origin teachings of the Delicate Lodge, which are Pele and Firehawk. I have Irma, Star Spirit Woman, which is my main shamanic teacher. I have a body of support and help and guidance that had made my work in this path more pleasurable, easier, more profound. So
Mm.
I'm very lucky to have that. And that's what I bring, what I want to offer to my clients. And I see it. I see an easier transformation, happier transformations.
Mm. Of course, because people are, I'm just going to use that metaphor of a bridge. They're bridging worlds, they're bridging wheels. And it feels much safer, much more comfortable, much softer if you have a mentor and a teacher helping you to walk across that bridge. First, finding the steps to it, because it can feel like a deep mystery and elusive almost. But the key is knowing enough when to ask for help, when to reach out. And that's what I did. That's how I met Dr. Terry, is that I was seeking, I was another level of growth. And a friend of mine mentioned her in another podcast or another blog article that she wrote. And I said, "Who's Terry Cole Whitaker?" And I had looked her up and I found her videos and was so happy that she's still making them today, right? She's still making videos, she's still teaching. It's her essence, it's who she is, right? She goes way out into the ethers, into all the ancient religions, and wherever she has to go to extract the perfect ingredient, whatever it is that she's seeking. And then she brings it back and shares it with all of us. And I'm so grateful. But, that's the thing. I could have watched her videos and that would have been it because lots of people do. But I felt this inner nudge inside me because I was also trying to learn some of the things that she was talking about. I needed a teacher and I wanted the opportunity to talk with her. That's how it works. And so that's what I did. I reached out to her and we made an appointment and we've been talking ever since. Right now, we podcast together. She is my teacher. She is a teacher for so many of us. And if, Terry Cole Whitaker may be a teacher for our listeners, Elizabeth may be a teacher for our listeners, right? But everyone has teachers that are meant to be part of your life, but we're the ones that have to take the action. We can be in pain. We can know we're meant to be living a different way, but the bridge is with teachers and conscious action steps, making the conscious decision to say, I'm going to reach out to this person. I'm going to make that phone call. I'm going to write that email. I'm going to make the connection, right? That is, it's like a soul action when that happens, right? More than just the mind, because the mind might want to say, we've got this, right? And that sometimes will keep us right on that very same wheel. So, so maybe let me ask you, because I'd love to have you back. Not everybody loves to go deep and loves to talk about these deeper things that are part of all of our healing. It is like the hero's journey. We have tests. We have to go through experiences where we learn, but for the people who are ready to break up with pain, right? Where we don't want to be in a marriage with pain as a way of life. Often you need a teacher or somebody to support you, to help you, and to be there with you, to empower you and believe in you that you can do it. And then to give you some tools to start also strengthening your steps to the point that you're crossing that bridge and more of that bridge and getting to the other side yourself, still with their mentoring. So, can people, do you have openings for people to see you? I'm just curious. We didn't talk about that before we,
Yes, I do right now.
right now.
So for yes, for those that people that want to have the deep yearning and desire to experience true love and to live that pain, that life of pain, I will ask them to go to lovintowholeness.com. They can go to the area where they can book a free appointment with me. It's 30 minutes because I want to see their particular situation and then I can recommend what kind of program will be the best for them. There is also in my website a listing of the services, how they can work with me, but we can have that person chat and see, and I can recommend what will be best for their particular situation. And I can also provide resources if they decide that it's not the time, whatever it is. I can provide resources for them. So that will be the best way to proceed. Lovintowholeness.com.
Perfect. That is perfect. Well, thank you. Thank you, Elizabeth. It's delightful connecting with you and sharing the wisdom that you have brought through time. Truly, these are timeless and I would say multi-layered, but very multi-dimensional skill sets that you have that can help people with a variety of things that people are dealing with now who want to step into their new, better, higher, more prosperous life, more joy-filled, right? And moving from dissatisfaction to greater joy. And so I hope people will reach out to you through your website, loveintowholeness.com. And please, let's do this again. because I've thoroughly enjoyed talking with you, and I think our listeners will too. So thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you.
My pleasure, and thank you to the listeners as well. I'm looking forward to hear from you. Thank you.
That's beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in today. And you'll see us again through more videos through Color the Magic and also through Whole Soul School and Foundation. And we send you blessings. Thanks, everybody.